because we'll no longer have any use for a brain at all. I've been watching my kids, and I think their eyes are kind of moving a little bit together. Well, enough of that. For 4 or 5 hours, he sits there watching television until his wife comes in, who is a little more practical than he is, and she taps him on the shoulder and says, "Charlie, it's time to go to bed." He says, "What?" "Oh." And then he reaches out and turns it off, and he knows how to do that. He just turns it off. And then he goes to bed, and the next day he starts this all over again. He does this for 40 years. At the end of that time, he's retired at 65, which always catches him by surprise, even though he knew it was coming for 40 years. And then he dies at 75 or 80 out of sheer boredom. Now, there's nothing wrong with this if we do it deliberately, if that's the way we've decided to spend our lives. But I think the pity comes when it isn't the way we decided to spend it. The pity comes when we're doing it by default, when we're living that way just because our next-door neighbor is. And I think it's time to do a little thinking about it. You see, I believe that everyone owes it to himself to become great at something. And since a man works 40 hours a week, about 50 weeks a year for 40 years, that's time enough to become great at anything. What can we learn from all this? 2 things, I believe. 1, if we're going to be individuals, we've got to be individuals. We have to have individual goals, individual thinking, and individual actions. Individual goals, thinking, and actions. And number 2, we must never conform to the great mass of people. We must love them. We must help them wherever we can, for our success will be determined by the amount of help we can give them. But we should never permit ourselves to become submerged in this suffocating sea of indirection and purposelessness. If we follow the crowd, the odds are 95 to 5, we're going to miss the boat too, because those are the statistics, about 95 to 5. So before we follow the crowd, let's take a look at it. If we flip back through the pages of history, what do we find? Every great thinker and leader, from Socrates to the Wright brothers, has been ridiculed, laughed at, pilloried, burned at the stake, or crucified. The crowd has made a consistently grisly game of tormenting its saviors. So it's better, I believe, to stand out a little bit as an individual. To belong to society, certainly, but to think for ourselves and act for ourselves. If we want to emulate someone, and this is a wonderful idea, just pick someone worthy of emulation, someone you admire and respect, someone perhaps who's lived before you, someone you know succeeded. Do what he did. But don't follow the guy down the block, because the odds are 95 to 5, he doesn't know where he's going. Have you ever thought much about this? Wouldn't it be terrible if we were following people who were following us? It could happen, you know. Take this fact, for example. This, to my mind, is one of the most overlooked facts in America. We should realize that every single job, no matter what it may be, every single job holds somewhere within it the road to greatness, the key to everything we could possibly want, if we'll only go about it a certain way, if we'll do what Dr. Schweitzer said we're not doing, if we'll think about it and find an application for it. That's all we have to do, to look within the job we now have for the greatness that lies there, and it's there if we'll look for it. We have a choice of doing one of 2 things. We can either compete or create. If we choose to compete, then let's not squawk about the rewards we get. If we choose to put ourselves on the same level with everyone else in our line of business, then we can pretty well figure that we're going to have minimal returns, because that's just about the way it works out. If we create, there is no limit to what we can accomplish. There is no ceiling. We can do anything we want to do within the framework of our present job and go as far as we want to go. One time a farmer took a little baby pumpkin and he poked it in the end of a 1-gallon glass jug. And of course it grew in there and flourished, and finally it completely filled the jug and can grow no more. And when it was ripe, he broke the glass and he had a pumpkin that looked just like a 1-gallon glass jug. The moral of the story, of course, is that we do a similar thing with our own lives. We poke ourselves into jugs beyond which we cannot grow. But these limits we impose upon ourselves. No one else does it.